You've been talking to yourself all wrong. And I'm not speaking in metaphors or riddles, I mean it quite literally. Right now, as you listen to these words, there's a voice inside you that never stops speaking. It narrates your life. It comments on everything. It whispers judgments about yourself, about others, about what's possible and what isn't. And here's what most people never realize, what took me years to understand. That voice isn't just describing your reality. It's creating it. Every single word you speak silently to yourself is a command sent directly into the invisible realm, where everything, absolutely everything, first takes shape before it appears in your physical world. I learned this truth the hard way, through my own suffering, and then through the suffering of hundreds of people who came to me desperate for help. I watched a woman lose everything she loved by constantly saying, "I always lose what I love." I saw a man create poverty year after year by declaring, "I'll never have enough." And I watched miracles unfold the moment people changed just one thing. Not their circumstances, not their bank accounts, not their relationships, but the way they spoke to themselves when no one else was listening. The invisible world is real. It's actually more real than this physical world you see with your eyes. Everything you touch, everything you experience, first existed as a thought, a word, a feeling in the invisible realm. Your furniture was once just an idea in someone's mind. The device you're using to hear these words was invisible before it became visible. And your entire life, every condition in it, was first formed by words, not just any words. Your words, the ones you've been speaking to yourself in secret. And if you don't like what you're experiencing right now, if there's lack where you want abundance, if there's loneliness where you want love, if there's sickness where you want vitality, I can tell you exactly why it's happening. You've been using the wrong words in your inner conversation. I'm not here to tell you to think positive thoughts and hope for the best. I'm here to teach you something far more powerful and far more precise. I'm here to show you the exact way to speak to yourself so that the universe has no choice but to rearrange itself according to your word. This isn't wishful thinking. This is spiritual law. And once you understand how it works, once you begin to use your words correctly, you'll stop being a victim of circumstances and become what you were always meant to be, a creator of circumstances. Heaven isn't a distant place you go to after you die. Heaven is a state of harmony, abundance, and perfect manifestation, and it exists right here, right now, waiting for you to claim it with your words. But you have to speak in a new way. You have to stop begging, stop hoping, stop wishing, and start declaring. You have to stop describing what you see and start announcing what you know to be true in the invisible realm. Because here's the secret that changes everything. What you see in your physical world right now is old news. It's the result of your old words, your old beliefs, your old way of speaking to yourself. But the invisible world is fresh. It's immediate. It responds instantly to your words spoken now. And when you speak correctly, when you speak with understanding of the law, the invisible becomes visible. Heaven sends exactly what you desire, not because you're lucky, not because you're special, but because you finally learned how to ask. Let me tell you what I mean by speaking in a new way, because most people have it completely backward. They look at their empty bank account and say, "I'm broke." They look at their body and say, "I'm sick." They look at their relationships and say, "Nobody loves me." And they think they're just being honest. They think they're just describing reality. But they're not describing reality. They're creating it. With every word, they're placing an order with the universe. They're giving instructions to the invisible forces that shape their lives. And the universe is absolutely faithful. It never fails. It takes your words and says, "Your word is my command," and it begins immediately to manifest exactly what you declared. I had a student once, a dear woman who came to me in tears. She was drowning in debt, and every day she would look at her bills and say, "I can't pay these. I'll never get out of this hole. Money just slips through my fingers." And I stopped her right there. I said, "Every time you speak those words, you're commanding the universe to keep you in debt. You're sending out workers into the invisible realm to construct more lack, more bills, more financial struggle." She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. "But it's true," she said. "I really can't pay them." And I said, "It's only true because you keep declaring it to be true. The moment you change your word, you change your future." I gave her a new affirmation to speak daily. Infinite Spirit, Open the way for the immediate payment of all that is mine by divine right. I am an irresistible magnet for my own. Notice I didn't say she would somehow manage or scrape by. I declared immediate payment, abundance, the full measure. She began to speak it morning and night. At first, her voice trembled with doubt, but repetition is the mother of conviction. Within 2 weeks, an unexpected check arrived in the mail, a forgotten insurance refund from years prior, the exact amount she needed to clear her debts. She wept when she called to tell me, not tears of relief alone, but tears of recognition. She had finally seen the law in action. You see, most people treat their words like meaningless vapor. They chatter and complain and declare limitations without the slightest awareness that they are building their tomorrows with today's statements. But the universe is not deaf. Every word you speak is heard, recorded, and reflected back to you in physical form. This is why I am so relentless about monitoring your inner and outer speech. If I hear you say, "I always get sick in the winter," I will stop you immediately, because you have just placed an order with the universe for illness. You might as well have mailed a request form to the Department of Disease. The law doesn't judge whether your order is wise or foolish, it simply fills it. Think of your words as seeds. You wouldn't plant thistles and expect roses, would you? Yet people do this very thing every single day. They plant seeds of lack, limitation, resentment, and fear, then wonder why their garden yields such bitter fruit. I once knew a talented artist who could never sell her work. She would tell anyone who listened, "Nobody appreciates real art anymore. The market is impossible. People only want cheap reproductions." And so it was. Her exhibitions were empty, her studio grew dusty. One day I asked her, "Do you enjoy being right about how terrible the art world is?" She looked startled. "What do you mean?" I said. "You've invested so much energy in being right about failure that you've made it inevitable. What if you invested that same energy in being right about success?" She didn't like hearing it. Truth often stings before it heals, but she began, slowly, to change her declarations. Within 2 months, she called me. "Something's shifted," she said. "I got an unexpected opportunity. But more than that, I feel different, lighter." You see, she stopped declaring her imprisonment and started declaring her freedom. And the universe, always listening, always responsive, rearranged itself accordingly. This is not magical thinking. This is spiritual law. Your words are not just commentary on your life. They are commands to your subconscious mind, instructions to the universe, blueprints for what you're building. When you say, "I never have enough," you're giving the universe an order, and it obeys. It says, "Your wish is my command. You shall never have enough." When you say, "I'm stuck," you create stuckness. When you say, "I can't afford it," you generate poverty. When you say, "Nobody appreciates me," you ensure continued invisibility. But when you turn your words around, when you begin to speak your good into existence, the entire energy field around your life begins to transform. Let me be clear. I'm not asking you to lie. I'm asking you to align with truth, the higher truth, the spiritual truth that exists beyond appearances. If your bank account is low, don't declare poverty. Declare, "I am a channel for divine abundance. Money flows to me easily and constantly." If you're facing challenges, don't announce defeat. Declare, "Every challenge is an opportunity for my good to manifest in unexpected ways." If you're waiting for something, don't complain about the wait. Declare, "Divine timing is always perfect. What is mine is already on its way to me." You're not denying facts. You're refusing to give them power. You're withdrawing your energy from what you don't want and investing it completely in what you do want. This is the difference between people who break through and people who stay broken. The breakthrough people understand that their words are wands, and they wield them consciously. You can't speak poverty and expect prosperity. You can't speak sickness and expect health. You can't rehearse your limitations and expect to exceed them. The universe doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't recognize when you're just venting or being realistic. It only recognizes the vibration of your consistent word patterns. I've watched people pray for financial increase while spending their entire day describing how broke they are. They speak abundance for 3 minutes in prayer, then speak lack for 16 waking hours. And they wonder why nothing changes. You're not going to outpray your prevailing conversation. Your dominant narrative wins, always. Here's what most people don't realize. Your word is creating continuously, not occasionally. It's not just the formal affirmation you speak in the morning. It's the complaint you make about traffic. It's the way you describe your body. It's how you introduce your career situation to strangers. It's the story you tell about why things never work out for you. Every single word is a brick in the structure of your reality. I knew someone who wanted healing desperately. She would affirm perfect health, claim divine restoration, speak every healing scripture she could find. But then she'd spend lunch breaks with coworkers, comparing symptoms, diagnosing each other, predicting which illness would hit next. She'd call friends to give detailed updates on every ache, every setback, every doctor's grim prediction. Her healing affirmations were seeds. Her daily conversations were floods that washed those seeds away before they could root. The shift happened when she made one decision. She stopped participating in sickness conversations. When people asked how she felt, she'd say, "I'm watching God restore me." When symptoms screamed, she didn't deny them silently, but she refused to narrate them. She stopped being the broadcaster of her condition. Within weeks, things began shifting, not because she pretended everything was fine, but because she stopped feeding energy to what she wanted to dissolve. This is the subtle art so many miss. You think you're just talking, just being honest, just keeping people informed, but you're actually assigning power. You're directing creative force. Every time you speak, you're saying to the universe, "This. Make more of this." Your words are votes for the reality you'll experience. Most people keep voting for what they claim they don't want, then act shocked when that's exactly what wins the election of their life. I know what you're thinking. But what if I'm just being realistic? What if I'm preparing myself for disappointment? That's not realism. That's rehearsal for failure. There's a vast difference between acknowledging a situation and energizing it with your constant attention and emotional investment. You can see what is without declaring that it must continue to be. You can observe a challenge without narrating its permanence. When you say, "I'm just being realistic," what you're actually doing is limiting your field of vision to only what has already manifested. That's not wisdom, that's spiritual myopia. The truly realistic person understands that reality is far more flexible than it appears. The real world is just yesterday's thoughts made visible. Here's what most people don't grasp. There's an invisible lag time between what you speak and what appears. This delay is both a blessing and a trap. It's a blessing because it means your foolish words from yesterday don't instantly destroy you. It's a trap because you keep speaking the same words over and over, not seeing immediate results, and you convince yourself that your words don't matter. But they're accumulating. They're building. They're constructing the framework of your future, brick by brick, word by word. And one day, seemingly out of nowhere, the structure becomes visible. The manifestation appears, and you'll swear it came from nowhere, when in truth, you've been building it with your mouth for months or years. Think of your words like seeds. You don't plant a seed and then dig it up every day asking why there's no tree yet. You plant it and trust the process. But here's what you're actually doing. You're planting seeds of success in the morning, then coming back in the afternoon and planting seeds of failure in the exact same spot. Then you wonder why your garden is such a confused mess. The universe doesn't judge your seeds. It doesn't say, "Oh, this is a negative seed, I won't grow it." It grows everything you plant with emotional conviction. It's completely neutral. That's the shocking truth that levels the playing field for everyone. And here's where people get tripped up. They say, "But I'm trying so hard to be positive. I'm saying affirmations every morning. Why isn't it working?" Because you're planting seeds with your mouth, while your subconscious mind is planting an entirely different crop with your habitual emotional states. Your affirmations say, "I am prosperous," but your stomach tightens every time you check your bank account. Your words say, "I am confident," but you replay that embarrassing moment from 3 years ago on an endless loop. The subconscious doesn't care about your conscious statements. It only responds to what you feel repeatedly, what you imagine vividly, what you emotionally accept as true. I watched a woman do this for years. She would tell everyone she wanted love, she was open to relationship, she was ready. But in her quiet moments, she would imagine all the ways it could go wrong. She'd picture herself abandoned, betrayed, left behind. And guess what her life kept reflecting? Exactly those patterns. Not because the universe was punishing her, not because she was cursed, but because she was unconsciously, but consistently planting those seeds with emotional conviction. The moment she became aware of this, everything shifted. She stopped trying to convince herself with words and started monitoring what she was actually feeding her subconscious through her imagination and emotional habits. Because here's the liberating truth. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to never have a negative thought. But you do need to become conscious of what you're predominantly planting. What are you rehearsing mentally? What scenarios do you run through your mind when you're driving, showering, falling asleep? That's your real prayer. That's what's going into the soil. And the subconscious, loyal servant that it is, will manifest it exactly. It doesn't judge. It doesn't save you from yourself. It simply creates what you've impressed upon it with feeling and repetition. This is why the ancients spoke of watching your thoughts, not because thoughts are dangerous, but because thoughts married to emotion become things. They become your reality. They become the patterns that run your entire life. Most people think they're thinking, but they're only worrying. There's a profound difference. Thinking is constructive. Worry is imagination misused. It's picturing what you don't want with all the emotional intensity of desire. I knew a woman who was a genius at worry. She could take any situation and spin it into catastrophe within minutes. Her son got a new job. She worried he'd fail. He succeeded. She worried success would change him. He stayed the same. She worried he wasn't ambitious enough. She had turned worry into a full-time occupation, and her life reflected it, an endless loop of exactly what she feared. When I pointed this out, she was shocked. "But I'm just being realistic," she protested. "I'm preparing myself." No. You're rehearsing disaster. You're giving your subconscious mind detailed instructions on how to fail. You're using the same creative power that could build your dreams to construct your nightmares instead. Here's what changed everything for her. I asked her to worry on purpose, to set aside 15 minutes each day to worry with absolute commitment, to really picture the worst, to feel the fear, to imagine every terrible detail. She couldn't do it. When worry became conscious, when she tried to worry deliberately, it lost its power. She started laughing. "This is absurd," she said. And it was. That's when she realized that worry had been happening to her, not by her. It was an unconscious habit, not a rational response. The subconscious mind doesn't judge. It doesn't say, "Oh, this is just worry. I'll ignore it." It treats every vivid thought charged with emotion as an instruction, as a blueprint, as a command. When you worry, you're programming. When you visualize fearfully, you're creating. The mechanism doesn't care whether you want the result or dread it. It only responds to the intensity and repetition of the impression. This is why I stopped asking, "What if it goes wrong?" and started declaring, "It's already working out for me." Not as a lie, not as a wish, as a command to the subconscious, which accepts orders from the conscious mind without question. The subconscious is like a garden. You are the gardener. Every thought is a seed. And here's what most people don't realize. You're planting seeds all day long, whether you mean to or not. The subconscious doesn't wait for you to sit down with intention and clarity. It's recording everything, your muttered complaints, your sarcastic remarks, your so-called jokes about being broke or unlucky. It takes it all seriously. I once knew a woman who constantly said, "I'm so bad with money." She'd laugh when she said it. Her friends would nod knowingly. It became her identity. And sure enough, no matter how much she earned, it slipped through her fingers. Not because she was actually bad with money, but because she had planted that seed so deeply, so consistently, that her subconscious made it true. It became a mission. Prove this belief right at all costs. When I pointed this out, she was offended at first. "It's just a joke," she said. But jokes are affirmations in disguise. The subconscious doesn't have a sense of humor. It doesn't know the difference between a playful jab and a solemn vow. It just listens, absorbs, and obeys. So I told her, "Stop joking about what you don't want. Start declaring what you do, even if you don't believe it yet." She resisted. "But I don't feel like I'm good with money," she said. And I told her you don't have to feel it first. Feeling follows repetition. Say it enough, and the feeling catches up. She started saying, "Money flows to me easily and consistently." She said it in the mirror. She said it while paying bills. She said it when her anxiety flared up. At first, it felt ridiculous. Then it felt neutral. Then one day, it felt natural. And her circumstances, without any dramatic external change in her job or income, began to shift. She stopped losing money. She started noticing opportunities. Her entire relationship with abundance transformed, not because the world changed, but because her inner programming did. This is what most people never understand about affirmations. They're not about forcing reality to bend. They're about reprogramming the subconscious mind that has been running faulty software for years, sometimes decades. Think of it this way. Your subconscious is like soil. Whatever seeds you plant, it will grow. It doesn't judge. It doesn't argue. It simply accepts and manifests. If you've been planting seeds of fear, lack, and limitation, that's exactly what's blooming in your life right now. But here's the extraordinary part. You can change the harvest by changing the seeds. I worked with a woman who had been chronically ill for years. Doctors couldn't find anything definitively wrong, but she was always exhausted, always in pain, always struggling. We began working with the affirmation. Every cell in my body is filled with divine light and energy. She resisted at first. But I feel terrible, she protested. I'm lying if I say this. I explained to her that she wasn't lying. She was declaring a spiritual truth that existed above her current physical manifestation. She was calling forth what already existed in the divine mind. Within weeks, her energy began to shift. Within months, the chronic pain that had plagued her for years simply dissolved. Her doctors were baffled. But I wasn't surprised at all. She had changed the inner conversation. The body simply followed instructions from a new authority. This is not mysticism. This is spiritual law as reliable as gravity. Your subconscious mind is listening to you every moment of every day. It hears what you say out loud. It hears what you think silently. It feels what you emotionally broadcast. And it is constantly working to manifest circumstances that match those vibrations. When you deliberately speak words of health, prosperity, love, and success, you are giving your subconscious new marching orders. You are redirecting the creative force within you toward outcomes that serve your highest good. But there's a critical component most people miss entirely: feeling. Words without feeling are like seeds without water. They simply won't grow. You must speak your affirmations with conviction, with emotion, with the feeling of already having received what you're declaring. This is where the power lives. And here's what most people get wrong. They think speaking with conviction means shouting louder. They think emotion means forcing tears or faking enthusiasm. But that's not what I'm talking about. Real conviction comes from a quiet inner knowing. It's the difference between desperately begging and confidently claiming what's already yours. When you say, "I am prosperous," do you feel prosperous in that moment? Or do you feel like a liar? Because if you feel like a liar, your subconscious knows it, and it will reject that seed immediately. This is why I always tell people to start with statements they can believe. If "I am a millionaire" feels too far-fetched, start with "I am open to receiving abundance," or "money flows to me easily and naturally." Find the words that create a feeling of relief, of possibility, of yes in your body. I remember a woman who came to me absolutely drowning in debt. Every affirmation I suggested, she would respond with, "But that's not true for me right now." Finally, I said, "Then let's speak what is true." We crafted this simple statement: "I am learning to receive." That was it. Nothing fancy. But when she said those words, her whole body relaxed. She could believe them. And from that belief, from that small opening, the universe began to work. Within 3 months, unexpected checks arrived. Old debts were forgiven. Opportunities appeared that she never could have orchestrated through effort alone. Why? Because she stopped arguing with her own words. She stopped creating internal conflict. Her conscious and subconscious minds were finally in agreement, and when those two forces align, miracles become inevitable. This is the secret that changes everything. Your words must create harmony within you, not warfare. Every time you speak an affirmation while thinking, "Yeah, right," you're planting seeds in poisoned soil. But when you find words that make your soul say, "Yes, this could be true," you've found the frequency where transformation happens. So test your affirmations. Say them out loud and notice how your body responds. Does your chest expand or contract? Do you feel lighter or heavier? Your body never lies. It knows the difference between empty words and true declarations. Trust that wisdom. When you speak your word with genuine feeling, you set into motion forces that must respond. This is not theory, this is spiritual law. I've watched students struggle for months with affirmations that sounded beautiful but felt hollow. Then one day, something shifts. They speak the same words, but this time there's conviction behind them. There's feeling. There's faith. And suddenly, demonstrations begin to appear. Let me share what happened with a woman who came to me desperate for financial relief. She'd been affirming prosperity for a year with no results. I listened to her speak her affirmations, and immediately I knew the problem. Her words were correct, but her tone was pleading. She was begging the universe instead of declaring truth. I said to her, "Speak as though you're reminding yourself of something you already possess, not asking for something you lack." She tried again. This time, she stood taller. Her voice steadied. "I give thanks for my immediate and endless supply," she declared. Not hoped, not wished, declared. Within 2 weeks, an unexpected inheritance came through channels she hadn't even considered. This is the power of combining word with feeling and faith. You're not trying to convince God of anything. God already knows you're good. You're convincing your own subconscious mind to accept what's already true in the spiritual realm. You're aligning your consciousness with divine reality. Now, here's where many students trip themselves up. They speak their affirmations once or twice, then immediately return to their old mental habits. They affirm abundance in the morning, then complain about bills all afternoon. They declare health, then spend the evening discussing their symptoms in detail with anyone who'll listen. Your word must become your dwelling place. You must live in your affirmation, not just visit it occasionally. If you're affirming, "I am always in my right place, doing my right thing," then you cannot spend your day fretting about whether you're on the right path. The two positions are incompatible. Choose one and commit to it fully. This doesn't mean you ignore practical matters or pretend problems don't exist. It means you address challenges from a position of spiritual authority rather than victim consciousness. There's a vast difference between saying, "I don't know how I'll pay this bill, I'm so worried," and saying, "I recognize this obligation, and I know my supply is already prepared." When you make this shift, you're not being naive, you're being metaphysically astute. You're working with the actual structure of reality rather than against it. I've watched people transform impossible situations simply by changing the words they spoke over them. A woman once told me she was trapped in a difficult living situation. Every time she described her circumstances, she used words like trapped, stuck, no way out. I suggested she change her language. Instead of "I'm trapped," say "I am being guided to my right place." Instead of "I can't leave," say "the perfect conditions are now manifesting." She resisted at first. It felt false to her, like lying. But I explained, "You're not lying to yourself, you're telling a higher truth. The limitation is the lie. Your freedom is the truth that exists in the invisible realm, waiting to take form." Within 3 weeks, a series of unexpected events created an opening where none seemed possible. A relative offered help. A new opportunity appeared. The impossible situation resolved itself with such ease that she could barely remember why it had seemed so insurmountable. This is the magic, and I use that word deliberately, of aligning your words with spiritual law. Now, some people worry that positive speech means denying reality. They ask, "Isn't it dishonest to say I'm abundant when my bank account is empty?" But you're not denying the appearance. You're denying the appearance's ultimate power over you. You're recognizing that the physical manifestation is always secondary to the spiritual reality. The bank account is showing you a picture of yesterday's consciousness. When you change today's consciousness through your words, tomorrow's picture must change. This is law, as reliable as the law of gravity. Your words are also powerful in how you speak about others. When you criticize, judge, or speak limitation over another person, you're actually binding yourself. The universe doesn't distinguish between you and them at the level of consciousness. When you say, "She'll never change," you're creating stagnation in your own experience. When you say, "He's always been difficult," you're cementing difficulty into your reality. But when you bless others, speak their highest potential, and refuse to rehearse their faults, you liberate yourself. This is the profound secret of forgiveness. It's not primarily for the other person's benefit, it's for yours. You see, forgiveness dissolves the chains that bind you times to the past. When you hold resentment, you're like a person gripping hot coals, intending to throw them at someone else, but you're the one being burned. Every time you replay the offense in your mind, you recreate the pain in your present moment. You hand over your peace, your joy, your very life force, to something that may have happened years ago. I've watched people age prematurely from the weight of unforgiveness. Their faces carry the hardness of their grudges. Their bodies manifest the tension of their unresolved anger. They wonder why they're exhausted, why life feels heavy, why abundance eludes them, never realizing they're dragging invisible chains behind them everywhere they go. But the moment you forgive, something miraculous happens. The energy that was locked in resentment becomes available for creation. The mental space consumed by grievances opens up for inspiration. You literally lighten your vibration, and when your vibration lightens, you attract lighter, brighter circumstances. Now, let me address a common misunderstanding. Forgiveness doesn't mean condoning harmful behavior. It doesn't mean you must maintain relationship with someone who hurt you. It doesn't require you to trust foolishly or expose yourself to repeated harm. Forgiveness is an internal shift, not an external obligation. You can forgive and still maintain boundaries. You can release resentment and still choose wisdom in your associations. The key is that you free yourself from the energetic entanglement. You stop giving your power away to what happened. Here's a powerful technique I've used with remarkable results. When someone has wronged you, bless them silently and wish for them everything you want for yourself. This practice might feel impossible at first. Your ego will resist violently, but persist. Say inwardly, I bless you and release you. I wish you peace, prosperity, and every good thing. What you're really doing is cutting the energetic cord that binds you together in negativity. You're declaring to the universe that you refuse to remain in this lower vibration. And watch what happens. Either the relationship transforms completely, or it naturally dissolves without drama, making space for better alignments. The universe cannot simultaneously deliver your good while you're vibrating at the frequency of unforgiveness. It's spiritually impossible. It's like planting seeds while simultaneously salting the soil. I've watched people cling to their bitterness like treasure, carefully cataloging every slight, every wound, every moment of betrayal. They guard these memories ferociously, pulling them out to examine in quiet moments, keeping the pain fresh and alive. And all the while, they wonder why their good cannot reach them. Beloved, your resentment is a locked door, and your blessing is standing on the other side, knocking. I've seen miraculous transformations when people finally released the prisoner they'd been holding captive in their hearts. A woman came to me once whose business had been failing for years. She'd exhausted every avenue, better marketing, new products, relentless hustle. Nothing worked. When we talked, the real issue emerged. 10 years prior, a former business partner had betrayed her trust. She spoke of this person with such venom that I could feel the toxicity in the room. Every penny that person stole from you, I told her. You've paid tenfold and blocked prosperity. Within weeks of her doing the forgiveness work, her business turned around. Not gradually, suddenly. New clients appeared. Old debts were paid. Opportunities materialized from nowhere. The universe had been waiting for her to open that locked door. This is how the law works. Your consciousness creates your circumstances. When your consciousness is poisoned with unforgiveness, your circumstances reflect that poison back to you. You cannot selectively block one person and remain open to your good. Energy doesn't work that way. When you close your heart to anyone, you close it to everyone, including yourself, including God, including every blessing trying to reach you. I hear your protest, but they don't deserve forgiveness. Perhaps not, but you deserve freedom. You deserve peace. You deserve the life that's waiting for you on the other side of your resentment. Forgiveness isn't about them. It never was. It's about you reclaiming your power, your peace, and your prosperity. It's about refusing to give anyone rent-free space in your consciousness. It's about saying, you no longer have permission to block my good. The moment you truly forgive, you'll feel it a lightness, a release, as though someone cut the ropes that were binding you. And here's what happens next. Here's where the miracles begin to rush in. You see, your subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between what you're holding on to and what you're attracting. It only knows vibration. It only knows the feeling you're radiating. When you're vibrating at the frequency of resentment, blame, or bitterness, you're sending out a signal that says, more of this, please. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, delivers. But the moment you forgive, the moment you release that energetic weight, you shift frequencies entirely. You move from the frequency of lack to the frequency of love, from contraction to expansion, from closed to open. And when you're open, when you're vibrating at that higher level, the floodgates open. I've seen it happen countless times. A woman forgives her ex-husband, who left her financially devastated, and within weeks, an unexpected check arrives in the mail. A man forgives his business partner who betrayed him, and suddenly a new opportunity appears better than anything he could have imagined. A mother forgives herself for the mistakes she made, raising her children, and her relationship with them transforms overnight. This isn't coincidence. This is spiritual law. This is cause and effect on the invisible plane. Think of it this way. Imagine your life as a garden. Resentment is like planting weeds. You water them with your thoughts, you feed them with your words, you give them sunlight with your attention, and they grow. They choke out everything else. They take over the whole garden. But forgiveness? Forgiveness is the plow that turns the soil. It uproots those weeds entirely. It clears the space. And once the space is clear, you can plant new seeds, seeds of joy, seeds of prosperity, seeds of love, and those seeds grow fast, because the soil of your consciousness is finally fertile again. Now, let me address something important. Some of you might be thinking, but Florence, what if they don't deserve my forgiveness? What if they never apologized? What if they're still out there doing the same harmful things? Here's the truth. Forgiveness has nothing to do with them deserving it. Forgiveness isn't a gift you give to them, it's a gift you give to yourself. Think of forgiveness like this. Imagine you're carrying a backpack filled with rocks. Every resentment, every replay of what happened, every angry thought, it's another rock in that bag. The person who hurt you, they're not carrying your backpack. You are. They might be sleeping peacefully at night while you're awake, replaying conversations, imagining what you should have said, feeling that burn of injustice in your chest. When you forgive, you're not saying the rocks weren't real. You're not pretending the weight didn't hurt you. You're simply deciding to put the backpack down. I've watched people waste years, decades, even carrying around grievances that the other person has completely forgotten about. The betrayer has moved on with their life, while the betrayed is still stuck in that moment, reliving it every single day. Who's really being punished here? Forgiveness doesn't mean you trust that person again. It doesn't mean you let them back into your life. It doesn't mean there are no consequences for their actions. You can forgive someone and still maintain boundaries. You can forgive someone and never speak to them again. You can forgive someone and still acknowledge that what they did was wrong. What forgiveness does mean is this. You're releasing the emotional charge. You're choosing to stop giving your precious life energy to someone who hurt you. You're deciding that your peace matters more than your right to remain angry. Here's something powerful I want you to understand. You can forgive someone without ever telling them. Forgiveness is an internal shift. It's something that happens in your heart and mind. You don't need their participation. You don't need their acknowledgement. You don't need closure from them to create closure for yourself. Some of the most profound forgiveness I've witnessed has been completely silent, a quiet decision made in someone's heart to finally let it go. Because forgiveness is ultimately an inside job. It's you releasing the energy that's been locked up in resentment. It's you deciding that your peace matters more than proving you were wronged. And here's something beautiful that happens when you truly forgive. You stop attracting similar situations. This is the law at work again. When you're still carrying unforgiveness, you're broadcasting that frequency. You'll keep meeting people who trigger that same wound. You'll keep finding yourself in circumstances that feel frustratingly familiar. But when you genuinely release it, when you forgive from your heart and not just your head, the pattern breaks. You stop being a vibrational match for that experience. I've seen people forgive abusive parents and suddenly their romantic relationships transform. I've watched someone forgive a dishonest business partner and immediately their new ventures begin flowing with integrity and abundance. This isn't coincidence. It's spiritual law. Now, let's address the perhaps most challenging form of forgiveness, forgiving yourself. Oh, how we hold ourselves hostage for years over mistakes we made. We show compassion to everyone else, but we keep ourselves locked in a prison of shame and regret. We replay our failures like a terrible movie we can't turn off. Self-forgiveness requires you to accept that you did the best you could with the consciousness you had at the time. You didn't know then what you know now. You were operating from a different level of awareness. And that version of you who made that mistake? They were doing their best with the tools they had, the wounds they were carrying, the fears they were navigating. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago, or even 5 months ago. Every experience has been shaping you, growing you, teaching you. To hold yourself accountable to standards you didn't yet understand is profoundly unfair. Self-forgiveness is not about excusing what happened. It's not about saying, "it doesn't matter," or pretending the consequences weren't real. It's about releasing the death grip you have on your own throat. It's about understanding that you can acknowledge the harm without sentencing yourself to a lifetime of internal punishment. Here's what changed everything for me. I realized that the part of me doing the condemning wasn't even my authentic voice. It was an echo chamber of every critical voice I'd ever internalized. Parents who meant well but wounded, teachers who confused discipline with degradation, a culture that profits from our shame. When I truly listened, I could hear that the voice wasn't mine at all. It was borrowed suffering. You have carried shame that was never yours to carry. You have accepted guilt for things that were done to you, for circumstances beyond your control, for being human in moments that demanded perfection. And now you're exhausted, aren't you? Because shame is the heaviest weight we ever bear, and you've been carrying it for far too long. Let me tell you about the woman who came to me unable to forgive herself for staying in a destructive relationship. "I should have known better," she said. "Everyone told me to leave." But when we looked closer, we saw a young woman who had never been taught what love actually looked like, who confused intensity with intimacy, who believed she could heal someone through devotion. She wasn't stupid. She was conditioned. And the moment she understood that distinction, the shame began to lift. Your past decisions made perfect sense to the person you were then, with the information, resources, and emotional capacity you had available. Looking back with your current awareness and judging that former version of yourself is like expecting a child to understand calculus before they've learned to count. This doesn't mean your past actions didn't have consequences. Of course they did. But understanding why you made those choices allows you to respond to yourself with compassion rather than condemnation. And here's something most people miss entirely. Self-forgiveness isn't a one-time event. It's not like you sit down one afternoon, declare yourself forgiven, and then skip off into the sunset completely healed. That's the Hollywood version. The real process looks more like learning to walk after an injury. Some days you'll feel strong and steady. Other days you'll stumble. You might have a morning where you genuinely feel free from your past, and then by evening, something triggers that old shame, and suddenly you're right back in it, wondering if you've made any progress at all. This is completely normal. This is how transformation actually works. I worked with a woman who spent 15 years carrying guilt over a business decision that cost her employees their jobs. She'd done the mental work, understood the context, even received forgiveness from the people affected. But every few months, the guilt would surge back with the same intensity as the day it happened. She thought this meant she hadn't really forgiven herself, that she was somehow failing at healing. But I helped her see something different. These waves of emotion weren't evidence of failure. They were opportunities to practice the forgiveness deeper, to extend compassion to herself at new levels. Each time that guilt returned, she had a choice. She could interpret it as proof that she was irredeemably broken, or she could meet it with the same patience you'd show a frightened child who keeps asking if everything's going to be okay. Eventually, the waves came less frequently. The intensity softened. Not because she fought against them, but because she stopped treating their arrival as a crisis. She began to notice something remarkable. The same nervous energy that used to spiral into panic, that tightness in her chest, that racing heartbeat started to feel different when she didn't resist it. One day, before a presentation, she felt the familiar surge. But instead of catastrophizing, she simply observed. "There's that feeling again," she whispered to herself. And in that moment of acknowledgement without judgment, something shifted. The energy didn't vanish, but it transformed. It became alertness, readiness, the same physiological response, but without the narrative of danger wrapped around it. This is the paradox that trips us up. We think we need to eliminate anxiety to feel better. But what if the goal isn't elimination? What if it's transformation? Because that energy, that quickening of your pulse, that heightened awareness, it's actually life force. It's your system preparing you to meet the moment. The problem isn't the energy itself. It's the story we tell about it. When we label it as bad or wrong, we create a second layer of suffering. But when we recognize it as neutral, just energy moving through us, we reclaim our power. She started experimenting with this approach in small ways. When anxiety arose while driving, she'd loosen her grip on the steering wheel and breathe. When it showed up during a difficult conversation, she'd feel her feet on the ground and continue speaking. She stopped performing the mental gymnastics of trying to prevent it. And here's what happened. The anxiety lost its power to derail her. Not because it went away, but because she stopped making it mean something catastrophic. Your nervous system is incredibly intelligent. It's been keeping humans alive for millennia. But it can't tell the difference between a real threat and an imagined one. When you constantly feed it stories of danger through rumination, through catastrophic thinking, it stays activated. But when you meet those sensations with calm awareness, when you reassure your system through your actions rather than your thoughts, it begins to recalibrate. This is why exposure therapy works. Not because you convince yourself the thing isn't scary, but because you show your nervous system, through repeated safe experiences, that you can handle it. You're retraining the alarm system. You're teaching your body that the false alarm doesn't require evacuation. And here's something most people never realize. Anxiety thrives in avoidance, but it withers in presence. Every time you avoid the thing you fear, you send a message to your subconscious that says, yes, this is dangerous. I was right to be afraid. The anxiety gets stronger. But every time you stay present with discomfort, not fighting it, not fleeing from it, just breathing through it, you send a different message. You say, I can be uncomfortable and still be okay. This doesn't mean throwing yourself recklessly into situations that genuinely harm you. It means distinguishing between actual danger and anticipated discomfort. It means recognizing that your imagination has been running a horror movie on repeat, and you've been living as if the movie were real. I spent years treating my anxious thoughts as prophecies. If I imagined rejection, I avoided connection. If I imagined failure, I avoided trying. I was living in a prison I'd built from scenarios that had never happened and likely never would. And the cruelest part? I called it self-protection. I thought I was keeping myself safe, when really, I was keeping myself small. The shift came when I stopped asking, what if this terrible thing happens, and started asking, what if I could handle it even if it did? That question changed everything. Because suddenly, the focus wasn't on controlling outcomes, it was on trusting my capacity to navigate them. You are more resilient than your anxiety gives you credit for. You have survived every difficult moment in your life up until now. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every terrifying unknown, you're still here. And that's not luck. That's resilience. That's proof. So when you're in that dark night, wondering if you've been abandoned, wondering if the universe forgot your address, remember this. You haven't been forgotten. You're being forged. Every single delay you've experienced, it wasn't rejection. It was preparation. Every door that slammed in your face, it wasn't the end. It was redirection towards something you couldn't even see yet. I've watched people lose businesses only to start empires. I've seen marriages end only to make room for love they never knew existed. I've witnessed health crises that forced people to finally put themselves first, and in doing so, they found their purpose. The blessing wasn't in what they lost. The blessing was in who they became because of it. And here's what most people miss. Your breakdown isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. You think you're falling apart, but what if you're actually falling together just in a way you didn't plan? See, we all have these scripts in our heads about how our lives should go. The timeline we're supposed to follow, the milestones we're supposed to hit. And when life doesn't match that script, we panic. We think we've failed. But what if your detour is actually your destiny? What if everything you think went wrong was actually going exactly right, just not according to your limited human understanding? I'm not saying your pain isn't real. I'm not dismissing your struggle. What I'm saying is this: don't let the difficulty convince you it's not divine. Because here's the truth that'll set you free. God doesn't waste pain. Every tear you've cried is watering seeds you can't see yet. Every night you couldn't sleep is building strength you'll need for the next level. Every person who walked away made room for the ones who are supposed to stay. Nothing is wasted, nothing is random, nothing is without purpose. You're not behind schedule. You're right on time for your specific journey. You're not broken beyond repair. You're being rebuilt into something stronger. And you're not forgotten by the universe. You're held by it even when you can't feel the hands. So keep going. Keep believing. Keep trusting that what's meant for you is already on its way. Your miracle isn't late. It's right on time. And so are you.